Limestone, 1833, a play for radio by Adanma, Onyedike, Barton, Margo Buchanan, and Kevin Lane Dearinger, with sound design created by Samuel Lockridge, edited by Bo List, produced by Athens West Theater Company and University of Kentucky Public Radio, 91.3 WUKY, with support from LexArts, Irene M. Burnett, and Steve and Terry Knudsen. Limestone, 1833, draws inspiration from the book The Pie Seller, the Drunk, and the Lady by Terry Foodie, our project historian.
You should always look for the people behind the heroes in the story.
Part 1. The Athens of the West. A thin ribbon of water runs through Lexington, Kentucky, known as the Town Branch, the middle fork of Elkhorn Creek. It runs from the northeast, with its headwaters by what is now the Jif Peanut Butter Factory, under Midland and Vine Streets, surfacing in the Rupp Arena parking lot, past the Manchester Distillery District, and joins with Wolf Run under Alexandria Drive, and out into the countryside. Today, the town branch is mostly covered over, but once it was open and exposed and the primary water source for Lexingtonians. Water from its banks was used to drink, to clean, to build, to bathe, and to release waste. It is connected underground by a series of limestone fissures and caves where the water becomes rich with minerals and hospitable to bacteria. Lexington was founded and named along the branch in 1775. A band of settlers camping along the edge heard of the first battles of the Revolutionary War and named their new community after Lexington, Massachusetts, where the war began. It was their tribute to the men who gave their lives and to the shot heard round the world. Lexington grew quickly up and around the town branch, as did its reputation for education and culture, including the first college west of the Allegheny Mountains, Transylvania University. When the poet Josiah Espy visited in 1806, he composed the following short rhyme about the young metropolis.
But Lexington will ever be the loveliest and the best, a paradise thou to me, sweet Athens of the West. I have little doubt but that in a few years it will rival not only in wealth but in population the most populous inland town of the United States. The country around Lexington for many miles in every direction is equal in beauty and fertility to anything the imagination can paint.
And that Lexington
is already in a high state of cultivation.
By 1833, when our story begins, Lexington is a city on the rise. Many of its homesteaders, travelers, and fortune seekers find their way to the Athens of the West via Limestone Road, which at this time connects Lexington with Maysville, Kentucky. Limestone Road snakes from the northeast and slices Lexington in half before stretching southwest toward Nicholasville and Danville. The intersection of Limestone Road and the town branch is at the center of the city, at Main Street along Postlethwaite's Tavern, named for its owner, the charismatic Revolutionary War veteran Captain John Postlethwaite. His tavern is the center of town politics, culture, and chatter about the blossoming horse industry. In 1832, the year before, a census revealed Lexington as a growing city with 6,167 men, women, and children, and 550 dogs. White men number 1,921, white women 1,830, black men number 1,377, black women 1,039. Of the 2,416 black men and women, 2,129 are enslaved and 287 are free. For while Lexington was already in a high state of cultivation in some respects, in others it was just as unenlightened as any place in America where human beings were considered property. Our story is about two such persons whose very lives were bought and sold on the auction block: the white William Solomon and the black woman known as Aunt Charlotte. Their unlikely friendship helped save Lexington at its darkest hour. Charlotte, last name unknown but known to most as Aunt Charlotte, was freed by her supposed owner, Spencer Cooper, 6 years prior in 1827. A talented baker and savvy businesswoman, she became famous for her pies, both savory and sweet.
Is there any sin greater than the evil and wickedness of the slave trade? Makes no sense that a human being created by God can own another one. I came to this place after I was sold away from my home in Virginia to Master Spencer Cooper here in Lexington, Kentucky. Lexington is the place where some of us are slaves, but some of us are free. Where the sheriff or some constable is always asking to see your papers and will beat you if you do not produce them as quick to their liking. I had it better than most slaves in that I worked in the kitchen. As the head pastry cook, I had liberties to go shop at the market. Always had my note from the master if anyone gave me trouble, and I took pride in making savory treats to serve to Master Cooper's business friends. Some like fruit, and my mincemeat pies were always the most asked for. Those were hard years slaving away in that kitchen, kneading dough and making sure they ain't cheat me at the market. But I have always tried to build myself up through it all. When Master Cooper found God, became a reverend, and freed me, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I built up my pie-selling business all by myself. Today, everybody in town knows about Charlotte's pies. At first, I used my contacts in the market to get the good ingredients, and I would bake and serve pies at a fair rate in all the nicest kitchens in Lexington. With the money I saved, I got a place of my own and then a cart so I could sell to everyone around town. I worked very hard, and by 1833, I was 42 years old. My hands were tired, and that cart was heavy to haul around.
Lexington is the heart of culture and education in Kentucky in 1833, and its Cheapside market is the center of the horrors of the Kentucky slave trade. One day in the spring of 1833, the market-goers of Cheapside are treated to an unusual sight: a white man on the auction block.
Sold! Thank you, sir. $575 for this outstanding likely Negro buck. Let's see, what do we have next? Ladies and gentlemen, next up we have King Solomon himself.
What's he king of?
Kentucky bourbon.
He looks more like he's king of the gutters.
This is a 58-year-old man being put up as an indentured servant for a term of 9 months.
Good day to you, Raleigh.
Well, how are you, Aunt Charlotte?
Well, I'm mighty tired, but right now I'm worried about my eyesight. Raleigh, that looks like a white man up there.
Sure is. And you know him. That's William Solomon.
No, that can't be. Lordy, what's happened to him? Looks like he's been through hell.
The bottle happened to him.
Poor soul. But what's he doing up there?
They picked him up for vagrancy, and the city can't afford to keep letting him sleep it off in the county jail. He looks like he's still drunk. Ooh, I can smell him from here.
Who wants to bid?
I'll give you a nickel.
I'll give you 7 cents.
Now, ladies Ladies and gentlemen, we need a real offer. We need at least 90 cents to cover his debts.
I will offer 80 cents.
Who placed that bid?
That's Dr. Duckley from the medical school. We know what he'll do to him. He'll feed old Saul more liquor and make him a cadaver for research.
Oh, no.
I offer 82 cents.
That's the corner. Old Solomon will be digging graves for sure.
You need help with your blacksmithing. You buying, Raleigh?
I ain't gonna buy no white man.
84 cents.
85 cents.
No, they'll kill him.
86 cents.
87 cents.
90 cents.
Woman, have you lost your whole entire mind?
Who said that?
Me, Aunt Charlotte.
That's impossible.
Never heard of such a thing.
Is that legal?
Ain't no way a black woman can buy a white man.
Well, why not? White folks buy black folks to work for them. I'm buying a white man to work for me. Sheriff, sir, I have 90 cents right here.
Calm down now, calm down. I have a very interesting offer of 90 cents from free Aunt Charlotte. Somebody out there gonna save this poor white man?
Well. He may suffer the public humiliation of being owned by a negress. He'll finally dine like King Solomon at Aunt Charlotte's table every night. I close my bidding.
I'm with you, Doctor. Let her have him. He's not worth it.
Going once, going twice, sold to free Aunt Charlotte for 90 cents.
You need some help with him? He looks a little shaky in the feet.
No, thank you, Raleigh. I got him.
Then I'm gonna go back to work. I got some horses to shoot.
William, come with me.
Aunt Charlotte, thank you. I don't want to be poked by it, those trancy doctors.
Well, I wasn't gonna let those white folks buy you. You may not be digging up graves, but you're definitely gonna be working. No one lives for free at my house.
Well, you had me for 9 months. What work would you have me do?
You're gonna help me make and deliver my pies.
Everybody does love your pies.
You better hope so, 'cause now I have 2 mouths to feed. Now let's get you started by pushing that cart up the hill. We're going home.
"58 years old, but still formidably large and strong, William King Solomon is a gentle giant whose worst enemy is himself. A once proud man, stooped by hard labor and shame, he is as far from the biblical king as one can imagine."
The Bible tells us right there in chapter 1, God formed man out of the dirt from the ground. Same part of Genesis goes on to talk about God breathing into our nostrils and us becoming living beings. But it seems like people get caught up in the living part and tend to forget the dirt part. They forget that we came from the ground, from dirt. I was born in Virginia, played with Henry Clay as a boy. When he went on to higher learning, I got good at digging. I made good money and came over the mountains to this fertile soil of Kentucky. I worked hard and made a good living as a digger, enough to build a nice 2-story house with high ceilings on South Upper Street. I made a name for myself. They'd say, if you want a level walkway or you're excavating a new foundation, hire William Solomon. Then life happened. The house went from joy to sorrow because of death and drink. I got older and all I knew was how to navigate dirt and soil. My only companion was raw earth. I couldn't see my way around it, and I hated myself for it. Drink got a hold of me, and when that happens, people tend to think you're no better than dirt.
Part 2. Cholera, the Blue Death. Cholera sneaks into the body through drinking water. In the days before indoor plumbing and water treatment facilities, the same bodies of water people drank from were also the bodies of water in which human waste was disposed. Thus, once cholera finds its way into a water source, it cycles through again and again, magnifying and multiplying in anyone who drinks from that source. Once ingested, the bacteria attacks the small intestines and causes digestive catastrophe in the victim. Cholera made its way down Limestone Road to Lexington from Maysville in 1832, after making its way from Asia, then Europe, then North America over many months. It faded away quickly in Kentucky with a dry season, but late May and early June of 1833 bring hard rains. Wastewater from outdoor toilets or privies flood into the streets, down sidewalks into sinkholes, and back into the wells and public pumps of a city with no sewers and no hospitals, aside from the lunatic asylum. Postlethwaite's Tavern, on the bank of the town branch, draws frequently from its waters. The month of June brings to the tavern stormy skies overhead, rising waters underfoot, and ill visitors from Maysville.
Evening, Raleigh. Looks like you escaped the worst of the downpour.
Yeah, I'm running my deliveries while we have a break in the rain. Is Captain Postlethwaite around?
Somewhere around here. What do you need?
The storm blew the hinges right off the door. I smithed up some new ones for him.
I'll see if he's still here. He's been feeling poorly today.
What's the matter with him?
Oh, sour stomach, he says.
There's a lot of that going around.
I'm not feeling too good myself. Well, here he is. You feeling better, Captain?
No, dearie, I'm not. I think it's time to close up for the night. There's a few folk been in and out thinking to douse their discomfort with whiskey, but they left feeling worse than they came in. You go on home.
Whatever you say. See you tomorrow, then?
We'll see. Good night.
Sorry you're ailing, Cap.
Thank you, Raleigh. But if I can survive British bayonets, I can survive this.
Here's your hinges.
Much obliged. If I can open up the doors tomorrow, I'll open them with these.
In the first few days of June, death and rain fall on Lexington in equal measure. It strikes first at the tavern, then one death becomes 2, and then 5, and then 20. An unseen enemy has infiltrated the bluegrass as well as the body of its inhabitants. A few days later, and a few blocks north, worried medical students gather at the Transylvania Medical Hall. Dr. Lunsford P. Yandell, their popular young instructor and the chairman of the Chemistry and Pharmacy Department, enters to address them.
Gentlemen, I bid you all good morning, although good may not be the most felicitous word. I am grateful that despite the growing alarm gripping our town, you have managed to make your way to my class this morning. This will be, I fear, our last meeting for the foreseeable future. The future may be bleak for many of us. Your studies have only just begun, but the next few weeks will sorely test your courage as men of medicine. My colleagues, including Drs. Dudley, Richardson, and Boswell, are already in the field. Although you are still untried students, you too will be needed in the battle to come. I trust that you will do your duty. It is, as you have heard, the cholera. Take notes, gentlemen. I have no time for the niceties. The ravages of the cholera may be divided into 3 stages, each clearly delineated by its symptoms, although progress through the 3 stages may be swift. The first is the most readily treated. It is marked by a kind of giddiness, followed by fever, nausea, and looseness of the bowels at a most fearsome level. I caution you to respond without hesitation to these early symptoms, as the second stage grows more treacherous. The abdominal distress intensifies as the already depleted body attempts to eliminate whatever fluids remain. At this point, you will observe drenching perspiration as well as severe pains and spasms in the extremities. The third and final stage is indeed almost invariably final. The spasms grow more alarming. You may find it difficult to detect a pulse in the patient's wrist. The skin becomes cold as marble. The tongue, too, is cold, and the hands begin to shrivel. The facial features become shockingly contorted, and eventually it is only the rasp of labored respiration that suggests any continuation of life. Not to mince words, gentlemen, the end can be the stuff of nightmares. If you do not have a strong stomach, at least be prepared with professionalism. A cool head may save you and your patients. Yes, your patients. Now, let us consider the recommended treatments in each of these stages.
While cholera does not distinguish between rich or poor, black or white, male or female, it does distinguish between those who share water sources and live near possible flooding and those who don't. Less than a mile east of the center of Lexington is Ashland, the sprawling farm of the city's favorite son, Henry Clay, and his wife, Lucretia Hart Clay. By 1833, Clay has already served as Congressman, Speaker of the House, Secretary of State, and now serves as Senator, as well as perennial presidential candidate. Clay, still stinging from a bitter election loss to Andrew Jackson the year before, paces his bedroom long after midnight. Lucretia beckons.
Come to bed. It's late, Mr. Clay.
The summer's heat appears to be boiling the moonlight. The humidity's spread out under the trees, brooding across the back pasture land.
Come to bed, husband.
When the moon passes over the house, I promise to be with you, Mrs. Clay. You go on back to sleep.
You'll make yourself sick with watching.
It's a hard time coming. We've seen it before.
And come through it. Last year we survived the cholera and an election.
We lost the election.
We survived. Survival is a victory. I hope, Mr. Clay, that you have no thoughts of riding into town tomorrow.
I think I know better, Mrs. Clay. I know that you, too, will be prudent in your movements. But it isn't just us that I worry about.
My husband, the great and public man.
The last time the cholera struck, all I could think of was to suggest a congressional day of fasting.
Fasting may have worked out to our advantage. We're still here.
Yes, here we are. Still at home at Ashland.
Mr. Clay, we must decide. Should we, do you think, leave and travel to a place of greater safety? We would hardly be the only ones in the neighborhood to take flight. Do you think that would be the wisest course?
There isn't enough wisdom to get around the cholera, my dear. There's only caution and uncertainty.
We have some experience and some knowledge, Mr. Clay. And while you were out in the fields today, I spent the afternoon in your library.
Oh?
I usually consider the study your sacred preserve.
I am as honored to have you share my books, Mrs. Clay, as I am to have you share my bed.
Your books, Mr. Clay, harbor more information about the cholera than I can take in without a team of Transylvania's medical men standing about me to explain the bewilderment of theories. But I do think you'll need to speak to the overseer when he stops in after our morning meal.
I suggest that you had better be the one to instruct Mr. Martin.
So, Mr. Clay, I am once again to assume the role of farmer, not just the farmer's wife, only this time with the farmer in residence, not off making speeches. I see.
That being the case, what, Mrs. Clay, would you think best to tell the overseer?
That we are, all of us, staying here at home. We will not be abandoning Ashland.
And?
That we will protect our children as far as God allows. That we will not venture off our own farmland until this pestilence has passed us all by. And that we will eat only the food we have grown here at Ashland. That we will only drink the water from our own well. That we will be sharing our own provisions and preserves with the household and with the field workers and laborers as needed. We must protect all of our people. We must take no chances with anything or anyone from outside our own fences. We must turn inward, Mr. Clay.
Inward?
Away from the state, the nation, the wide world. We must look to the Clays and their people. All of them. Our people.
And so then this is your plan. Isolation.
I think it might be our plan, Mr. Clay.
Once again, I find that I have married a wise woman, Mrs. Clay.
I am honored that the Honorable Mr. Clay should think so, and occasionally say so. Come to bed.
Wait, yes, there it goes. The moon has moved up over my head and over our roof, watching us. In another few hours it will go down, and the true darkness will set in. The darkness will be with us for a while, I fear. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land, both man and beast. And against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment.
Ah, the book of Exodus.
Yes. And so begins the frightful gloom.
Come to bed, Harry.
Yes, dear wife, yes. You are my pillar, you know. My Corinthian column.
Something I trust more than decorative, Mr. Clay. Now, try to sleep, my dear husband. Tomorrow may try our souls.
As Senator Clay returns to bed, the moon continues its rise over the hot night sky, bathing Ashland in a cool, thin wash of light. Clay lies next to his wife in the ornate four-poster bed they share on the second floor of the grand estate. A few dozen yards away, more than 60 black men, women, and children sleep uneasily in a row of cramped slave quarters, several to a room. Some of the servants who are typically entrusted to leave the estate for errands or farm business are further imprisoned by the specter of cholera that encircles the farm. Meanwhile, Aunt Charlotte's small house on Water Street is as different from the grandeur of Ashland as Solomon was from Clay. Solomon pulls a cart behind him, not Charlotte's pie wagon, but a plain and sturdy pallet cart. He hangs his head anxiously as he enters.
William, you are filthy. Take those boots off. You know I like to keep my house clean. It's past midnight. Where have you been? I had to pull the cart home myself today.
I'm sorry, Aunt Charlotte. I was looking for work today, like you asked, but there's that sickness, and bodies were just lying in the street. Every person should at least have the dignity of a burial. So I gave up looking for work, and I saw a pallet cart behind one of the deserted houses, and I just took it. I wheeled those bodies up to the cemetery, but the men hired there were too busy, so I had to bury them myself.
My goodness, you are doing the Lord's work. William, where did you put that cart? Do you know what will happen to me if the sheriff finds stolen property at a colored house?
I know. Of course I know. Ain't I been living with you for the last 3 months? I hid the cart someplace where I can find it. We're going to be needing it again.
Come warm yourself up by the fire. I've got some stew for supper. You must be starving.
Aunt Charlotte?
What's the matter, William? Why are you shaking?
I've been trying real hard, Aunt Charlotte. But those dead people had shriveled up hands, all blue. And others were just walking past them. Some were even stepping over the bodies. If I could just... I need a nip. A little something to get through this. Just a taste of your sherry.
Usually I keep it for cooking, and you know it's against the law for me to even have it, but truth is, I take a nip every now and then, and you have definitely earned one.
Thank you. I don't know where all this sickness is coming from. Something has a hold of this town. This is worse than what they're telling us.
The devil is a lie. I hear whole families are dying. Lord have mercy. The Reverend in church was saying it was a plague from God, so we all have to stay prayed up.
I don't know about God, but they say it's in the air. And I don't think it can be good that people are walking in that privy water. When I dig a privy, I dig it deep.
Well, we're not the ones to figure this out.
But we're the ones who will die. They don't care about poor folks.
I hear you, William, but we can't figure things out on an empty stomach. Come sit and warm yourself with this stew.
Can I have another drink?
Slow down. Get some food in your body. The rich people still need to have their bellies full, but I hardly sold any pies today. Did you make any money at all today?
Let's see here. 10 I have 25 cents for you, Aunt Charlotte. I took a walkway at the Gratz house.
Thank goodness. I don't know where we'd be without your digging money. You just need to keep at it. You better hope those rich people stay healthy because someone needs to buy these pies.
It's hard out there, Aunt Charlotte. The bodies keep coming. All done. Now, how about that drink?
A few days later, the Todd home on Main Street, east of the center of town, with a clear view of the burying ground from the front door. Young Mary Todd, 14 years old, stands outside on this hot day, watching Solomon pull his cart through town. The stink of death is, for the moment, overpowered by the smell of burning tar. Believing, as most do, that cholera is airborne, Mary's stepmother, Betsy, has instructed her servants to burn pots of it to ward away the illness. From inside the parlor, she spots Mary outside and throws open the door.
Mary! Mary, come in off the stoop and out of that dust! You have no business out there. It isn't safe, child. Come in and shut the door. Right this minute. Don't let that terrible disease into our home.
If you will insist on burning vats of tar to smoke us out of house and home, you can't blame me for gasping whatever breathable air I can find outside the front door.
That young Dr. Yandell has assured me that the tar smoke may dispel any noxious cholera miasma that threatens our well-being. I swear to my goodness, girl, you have no common sense.
My dear stepmother, it is perhaps more a matter of common decency. It isn't just the smoke. I cannot sit in this house and watch death go by, hour by hour, day after day, and pretend it isn't happening. Mr. Solomon out there in the heat with his cart and his wretched passengers. He looks exhausted, consumed.
I make no judgments about what Mr. William Solomon consumes and in what portions, but, Mary, he is not fit for your notice, nor the notice of any proper young lady. Certainly not any lady in the Todd family.
Madame Mintel says that a true lady respects all folks, and that looking down our noses at the less fortunate makes us the lower class.
What a school teacher says is of little use in the middle of this terrible time, child, and even less so when that teacher is a person of French origins.
Liberté, égalité, fraternité.
Pooh! I don't think your tiresome Madame Mintel will thank you for that, little miss. She and her fancy husband, I believe, ran away from France with their frilly skirts up over their heads in fear of the lower classes. I am sure that at this moment they wish they were back in Paris. Better the tumbrel to the guillotine, I should think, than King Solomon and his horrible cart.
Oh, Ma, Mr. Solomon is a gentle soul, a gentleman in his way. We all owe him a debt of gratitude. I will always be happy to shake his hand.
Well, there won't be any sort of shaking of hands until this is all over. If it ever is all over.
Yes, Ma. When it is all over, Mr. Solomon will be the hero of Lexington, and we will be the people who thought only of ourselves.
Well, girl, I'd like to know whom else we should be thinking about at such a time. Not French teachers, I'm sure, and not ditch diggers. I will speak to your father, Mary, and I am sure he will insist that we leave town as soon as possible. We'll be safer out in the country.
Yes, Ma. I shall be happy to shake Mr. Solomon's hand, to bow and speak to him on the street if we should ever pass by each other. Happy that we, Mr. Solomon and I, are still alive. Alive and not passengers on his cart, stepmother.
Alive.
Alive and grateful to be alive.
Oh, Mary, my dear child, I am terrified. Terrified.
So am I, my dear Ma. So am I. But I am by birth a Todd.
If you hear King Solomon's cart roll by, it ain't worth checking to see who died. If the cholera's on your side of town, you better call the Undertaker now. And if you're rich enough not to work outside and your walls are high, then you might get by. But if your sheets were white and today they're brown, you better call the Undertaker now. If your skin is blue and your eyes are red and you lose your lunch when you lie in bed, if it comes from your bum and your nose and mouth, you better call the Undertaker the Undertaker now. Just lay on down in a hole in the ground. No need to call the Undertaker now.
Part 3. Shadows Fall. Nighttime. Across the street from the Todd home at the old burying ground. Solomon and the free blacksmith, Raleigh Blue, worked together, lowering a heavy pine box into the ground.
Oh, careful. Careful now.
Oh, that's a big one. Let's get to it.
Wait, Raleigh, wait.
Oh, for God's sake, Solomon.
Let me fix that coffin
What
lid.
difference does it make? He dead.
It makes a difference.
I got a shovel full of dirt ready to fly.
Stop.
Nobody cares.
Somebody cares.
I wish they'd cared enough to stop feeding him so much. My back hurts. Come on, Sol. I had enough. I'm leaving. Town's deserted, but I gotta find a way to make some money. Hand over my share.
Mr. Gratz promised me $1 to clear bodies off of Mill Street. Did Mill Street look clear to you?
Well, you have to find yourself another helper if every pauper's gonna get buried like King George.
There. Done.
Are you sure? Don't you want to fix his hair while you're down there?
No, that'll do.
Fine. Lord, man, when did you get so fussy?
Just dig.
Are you sure?
Dig, Raleigh.
Dig, Raleigh. Stop digging, Raleigh. Help me carry this giant to the cemetery, Raleigh. I'm a free man, Solomon.
Freedom? Ha!
Yeah, well, I bought my freedom, Solomon. It's more than I can say about you. Look, why don't you keep that whole $1 from Mr. Gratz and go buy your freedom from Miss Charlotte and get the hell out of there? You may have forgotten this, William Solomon, but you still a white man.
Raleigh, shut it.
No, you shut it. Ain't nobody, not one white person in this whole state of Kentucky gonna hold you to an obligation to no colored woman. What happened to you? I remember times you'd share your bottle, we'd have a laugh, but I kept my distance because you got shoulders the size of an ox and hands the size of meat platters. You used to be a man. Wake up, mister, and get the hell out of town.
And do what?
Whatever white people do.
I got a roof over my head, Raleigh. I get fed. I got a job.
A job's when you get paid. Most days you don't make nothing.
A job's a job.
And your job's touching dead people.
Dead people are my people. White, black, I don't care anymore. I bury them all. You want to know why, Raleigh? Because I want to be dead. I want to be that man in that box. A man who's not struggling anymore. I want to be laid to rest. Rest. Sacred rest. Imagine that. The only time I can rest is when I'm good and drunk. So drunk I can't remember I'm alive. Dead drunk. Only sometimes. Yesterday, a poor woman smiled through a window when I lifted her dead father out of the street. And tonight I'll take a few coins home to Charlotte. And the moment she sees them, the lines on her face will ease and she'll hum a little while she's baking because she can afford fresh ingredients for her pies. But in the daylight, we're all dealing with this horror. We're left behind, abandoned by our wives and family. Our loved ones are gone. Who's better off, Raleigh? The living or my friends, the dead? I'm relieved to touch dead people, Raleigh. They're the only peaceful people I know.
You're all right there. How many folks you buried?
Oh, I lost track after 100.
100?
It's upward around 200 by now.
Lord, man. 200 back-breaking digs. You surely the king now.
June 11, afternoon, near Postlethwaite's Tavern. Captain Postlethwaite lies in bed nearby, clinging to life. Death will claim him in 24 hours' time. The streets are empty and most shops are closed. Near the tavern, Dr. Dudley walks wearily. A reporter from the Kentucky Gazette, the state's first newspaper, dashes toward him.
Dr. Dudley, excuse me, sir. I've been looking for you everywhere. I tried the medical hall, but the doors were locked and the place shut up like a tomb.
Our services have been required elsewhere, and I fear everywhere. And you are?
With the Gazette, Dr. Dudley.
It's my sad understanding that many of your newspaper folks were under the grip of the cholera, and that your press had ceased operation.
We hope to be back up and running soon, sir, but just now, sir, if I may, I should like to ask you about your letter, the one that caused a sensation in the spirit of Washington.
Ah, yes, your journalistic competition. So, of course, you will have stern objections either to me personally or to my ideas.
Well, questions, sir. With respect about your treatment of the cholera, sir? Your notions have caught the attention of the nation, sir.
Or at least the attention of your brother journalists in Nashville, and I am told even in Philadelphia. I fear that this is not the best of times, but ask your question, sir. Mind you, I have a great many patients and not much patience.
I am grateful for your time. Do you, Dr. Dudley, stand by your recommendation for treatment with what I think you call emetics?
I do. I'll try to explain. If a patient swallows arsenic, for example, induced vomiting works to remove the offending poison. I find that arousing the stomach with a lively dose of calomel, no more than 12 grains, provides a superior cathartic for the excitement of bilious secretions and for securing a, more consistent evacuation of the lower organs.
So the patient's forced to puke his guts out or worse?
Inelegant in phraseology, sir, but correct enough in meaning. Mercurial purgation has also been effective in the early phases of the cholera, combined with a long sweat under at least 2 thick blankets for relieving the, shall we say, spasmodic forms of the disease. Opium helps with the added benefit, of course, of, constipation, and a liberal dose of brandy may also be in order.
But what about purgation by bleeding? You've come out strong against the traditional use of the lancet to let blood.
Science has moved on, sir. I have found strong stimulation of the limbs to be an effective treatment. Once the afflicted lie down, my good man, their hours are numbered. Action saves lives. And when I have been called in early enough, I've encouraged the afflicted to engage immediately in strenuous exercise, on foot or better yet, on horseback. Exercise stimulates the vessels of the skin. Now, for those already off their legs, I recommend frequent dousing in cold water, as well as mustard and pepper compresses copiously applied above the bladder and the bowels. But the lancet, no, I think not. With this affliction, barbarian.
I'm sure you're aware that many other men of medicine disagree with your theories,
Theories?
sir.
No, sir. I speak from practical experience.
Just so you know, I will be asking Dr. Bosworth.
I take you to mean Dr. Boswell?
Yes. Sir, my apologies, Dr. Boswell.
That may prove difficult, sir.
I beg your pardon, Dr. Dudley?
I regret to tell you that my illustrious colleague, Dr. Joseph Boswell, died yesterday of the cholera, sir. Please record his honorable name correctly in the Gazette. Good day, sir, and may God be with you.
Part 4, Darkest Before Dawn. Cholera is everywhere in Lexington, and with it, the sunken eyes, shriveled skin, and messy suffering of hundreds. The streets and alleys are a patchwork of pooled water and slick mud. Wails of grief echo up and down the city's boulevards as mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, young and old, waste away in front of their families, one after the other. Evening, Charlotte's house.
I am the king and prince of drinkers, ranting, roaring, rattling boys. We despise your full-end thinkers and fill the taverns with our noise. We sing and we roar and we drink and call for more and make more noise than 20 can. 'Tis therefore all we swear that the man who knows no care, he only deserves the name of a man.
William, what are you doing here? William, I asked you a question.
You may own me, but you can't tell me what to do.
William Solomon, you are drunk and you dare not speak to me this way.
Oh, yes, Master Charlotte. I bow to thee. I bow to my colored master.
Constable, I have a vagrant here.
I'm sorry, Aunt Charlotte. It was a bad day. A horrible day. So many graves, so many bodies. I had to bury a little boy. I couldn't handle it. I just broke and I found this bottle.
I understand, but you just can't be speaking to me like that, all disrespectful.
I didn't want to speak to you at all, but you were making me.
So you had to bury a little boy today.
There were just so many little children. It made me think. You know, I wasn't always a drunk. Looking at me now, it's hard to believe that I had a nice 2-story house on Upper Street and a pretty wife. When she died, everything went to hell. I started drinking. My boy left. That young man I buried today reminded me of my boy.
That's one thing we got in common, losing our boys. When Master Cooper freed me, I had to leave my son behind. Freed me, but then kept my flesh and blood.
Lordy, let me pour you a drink.
Some people do not understand how hard it is to live free when your friends and family are still slaves. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen families split up and sold off. The screaming of children, the crying, it haunts my sleep sometimes. Before all of this sickness, I was selling pies to the rich, but I always saved some pies to give to the brothers working on the railroad. Hard to look them in the eye because they knew I was free. And that's why they called me Free Charlotte. I just wanted each brother to feel that I do realize my good fortune and that I see them as the human beings God made them to be. I made a solid business, a solid living, got this place, and now I'm just waiting for my boy. A piece of me is missing. A piece of my heart is just out there. You sleep on the pallet I'm saving for when my son is freed. I'm praying he's still alive.
I thought you were freed because your master found Jesus. Why didn't he free your boy?
Because when my son is in his prime, he'll be worth $800.
I guess money speaks louder than Jesus sometimes. Here, have another drink.
Look at us. A free black woman.
And a white slave. You better be careful. I know how to get to the Ohio River.
We both miss our sons, but we have to press on.
Here's to us pressing on and saving Lexington.
I'll keep feeding the people that are alive.
And I'll keep burying the dead.
Daylight. The clouds are parted, the sun shines down bright and bleak. An unnoticed man wanders the streets downtown. He is a bewildered and very human Kentuckian. He is uneducated, but he has heard the Bible. Nearby, an official calls out the names of the dead.
Mrs. Archibald Logan. Emily, colored servant at J.C. Curls. Mr. Benjamin Cobb. Mr. Moses Hall. Colored man and child belonging to Mrs. Jones. Miss Elizabeth Kind. Esther Oldham, free colored. Mrs. Ann Usher. Mr. John McGowan. The two daughters of Mrs. Sampson. Anna, colored servant at Mrs. Shields. Edmund Bateman, free colored, and his child.
You might ask me where I was when this all started, and I am not right sure I can tell you, but I can tell you where I weren't. I weren't on the street or in the shops or in the taverns down by Cheapside, and for once, I weren't in no jailhouse. Well, truth be told, I was up to my boarding house room. I stayed there for 3 days and 3 nights. It were damn hot in that room. The noonday were a fire in the sky, and nighttime weltered in the embers. But I didn't raise no sash nor leave that room for them 3 days and 3 nights. I stayed to myself. Quarantined, they called it. And nothing did I know outside my room. One of them nights, I heard a bell a-tolling. Somewhere, lonesome as an orphan child. And one of them mornings, I forget which one, I heard some old rooster shouting somewhere. And when I didn't hear that old bird again, it was like losing a friend. Sometimes the moon were hanging out there, looking like a big old clock that had lost its hands and given up on time.
Mr. Charles Wynn. Mr. Matthias Schrock. Harry Sykes, free colored, barber. Captain John Postlethwaite. Mr. Duncan Postlethwaite. Millie, colored servant at Postlethwaite's Tavern. 25 lunatics at the asylum, various. Bryant Stone, a boy, colored. James F. Royal, infant, white.
3 days and 3 nights. But I finally fall back into time and leave my room. I open my door and kind of look for my landlady, but her whole house is as quiet a waiting to. That house is empty, except for a sorry-looking dog whimpering out back by the stable. Well, first thing I do is open the back gate for that old mutt, and he's gone before I can think about where he'd go or where I am a-going. But I turn back, out the front door, down from the porch and into the street. Not a soul out there nowhere. Not one. And not a sound. Not right away, not like usual. I head down to Cheapside. Always somebody messing around at Cheapside, arguing about drinking too much, talking about hemp and horses, wailing about women what done 'em real bad deal. But all along the way, under that searching sun, not a soul. But then, sudden, like a chariot out of the time of Moses, an open carriage tears into sight, all grand, coming up fast, 2 horses. So I know it's fancy folks coming. There's 2 women, as I can see, riding high in the carriage. Ladies by the look of them. Rich ladies. Todd or Clay or Gratz ladies most like. Stiff backs, stiff in black, black bonnets on their heads. Just so. Parasols pointed at the sky. Dainty kerchiefs bordered wide in black over their mouths. Them rich lady eyes peering out, nervous and pink like weeping rabbits. And I know they's maybe scared of me, but more like scared of the sun and the time and the silence that stretches out everywhere, except for the sound of them horses and the wheels of that fearful carriage. But then in a heap of dust, they're gone, gone, gone. And just where they been, stepping out of their dust, is a white man with a cart. And he's a-pulling that old cart himself, like a mule, shovel tucked back over his shoulder. Oh, and it's a sorry load he's a-pulling. You hear a lot about dead folks, sad-ass stories about spirits and souls. They never tell you about the stink, and the pale skin, and the mouths hanging open, like they was trying to tell you one last thing. They don't never tell you how the eyes don't always stay shut. Like they's almost asleep, but keeping curious. I recognize some of them too. Not folks I know, but folks I seen, even when they didn't want to see me. Well, they sure looking at me now. All them eyes. Looking and not seeing a damn thing. And then there's their feet and hands, reaching and longing in different directions, stepping out into nothing, grasping out with curled fingers or tight fists, holding on when there is no more holding on, clutching hard their little white kerchiefs, pale in their stillness, bloodless and pulled away from life like ivy off an oak. But that feller pulling that cart, he don't look left nor right. His head's so far down in thought, you can't see his eyes at all. He might be the old reaper himself, if it weren't for the struggling sound as he pulls up in his breath and forcing that air in and out, willing himself alive so he can go on pulling that cart, slow, steady, and gentle-like, to the burying place up by the Baptists. I'm watching him like I'm watching another me. If I'd a hat, I'd take it off to him. So he moves on with his load, and I watch him go. And when he disappears into that empty afternoon, I sit down on the side of the street and wait. I wait for him to come back, dead certain of his return, in the long last cool of the evening.
And so, with many houses abandoned and absent citizens still unaccounted for, the total known dead from the cholera, June and July, in this year of our Lord 1833, 502 souls, black and white, and buried as decently as possible.
Go home to that bright distant shore and weep no more, weep no more.
Part 5, Daybreak. The interminable rains of May and June gradually come to an end, and the sun returns. Cholera recedes along with the waters of the once flooded streets and alleys, the privies dry, the town branch lowers, and the disease has, by and large, run its course. Life will never be the same as before, just as with any tragedy that affects an entire community. In a city of almost 7,000, more than 500 of them would be claimed within 1 month's time, or about 1 in 14. Graves are dug, funerals are conducted, and gradually Lexington goes about the slow and painful but necessary business of moving ahead. By early July, the bureaucracy of local government returns to full function again, and the city trustees put forth a number of recommendations that demonstrate that Lexington has learned something from the experience. On July 4th, they determined that
every privy shall have a pit at least 5 feet deep, unless impeded by solid rock, then no less than 4 feet, well walled with stone, brick, or wood. When the contents approach nearer than 2 feet to the surface, owner will be fined until privy cleaned out or filled with lime.
And
every stable in which horses are kept at livery or for public service, such as transporting the mail, shall furnish a privy built according to the provisions.
And negotiated a loan for $3,000.
For erecting works of improvement for the general health of the city.
And also
resolved that the town branch which serves as the main sewer of the city should be kept free from obstruction, and that the public officers see that all offenders be dealt with according to law.
And on July 15th, they issue a statement of gratitude to those
who most bountifully provided for the wants created by the distressing calamity that had fallen upon us. We sincerely trust their benevolence will receive its reward in this and in a better world.
With so many dead, children are left parentless. On an afternoon in the middle of July, some of them are huddled, seeking refuge behind a home called Mount Hope at the intersection of Mill and New Streets, across from Transylvania's campus. The name Mount Hope is both prophetic and ironic, for it would go on to offer tremendous optimism for white children across the bluegrass, but also deny it for the enslaved men and women who live and serve there. The master and mistress of Mount Hope are Benjamin, a successful hemp merchant and Lexington's only practicing Jewish citizen, and his wife, Maria, a Christian woman from a prominent family. Maria searches the house for Tilly, an enslaved servant not much older than the children who have gathered at Mount Hope.
Tilly! Tilly! Tilly, I just saw... Tilly, where are you? I just saw a gang of children in the backyard. Tilly!
Ma'am?
Oh, there you are. I was just upstairs trying to finally write Mother's obituary when I was disturbed by a noise from the backyard. I looked out the window and I was shocked to see a group of strange, half-naked children on our property.
Yes, Miss Gratz. Sorry, ma'am. I'll go speak to them again, ma'am.
Tilly, wait. You knew those rascals were there?
Yes, Miss Gratz.
Tilly, what in heaven's name?
Miss Gratz, you always say if we got plenty, I can share leftovers and such with those on the streets.
But those were not street people. They're little scoundrels that need to respect property and decency. Why, when Mr. Gratz finds out...
Please don't tell Mr. Gratz. I've only been feeding them our extras and scraps. Well, it got so I could smell those children before I opened the door. They needed to wash up and they got nowhere else to go.
Oh, but that's ridiculous. They should go home. Where are their parents? Oh, Tilly. Lord help us. Cholera? All of them?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, goodness. Orphans. Are they still there? There must be a half dozen of them.
5, ma'am. Oldest just turned 10.
Oh, dear. Tilly, you should have told me.
You've been full up mourning your own mother, Miss Gratz. Lord knows you don't need more troubles. I expect you're an orphan now, too.
Expect I am, Tilly. Oh, look at that baby playing in the water. You're right, I have been overwhelmed. Losing Mother, losing so many servants from this house, the city's a morgue. We're living a nightmare. I can't keep up, and you've had more than your share of work. It's impossible to find more help for us now. The city's practically deserted. The thought of doing one more thing is insanity.
That's true, ma'am. But I couldn't stand doing nothing.
I'm glad you've been feeding them. We can't turn our backs on innocent children. I'll figure out a way to tell Mr. Gratz that we have 5 more mouths to feed. I'll say, dear, there are only 5.
No,
surely.
ma'am. Sorry, ma'am. But there's more like 35.
What? Where?
This bunch here is clever. They moved into your old shed out back. The others are mostly living behind the market, grabbing food when they can. Must be at least 30 of them there.
30? And these 5 too? Are you saying that there may be as many as 35 orphan children living on the streets of Lexington?
At least. A lot of them are squatters. You know Betsy, who works for Miss Sayre. She's feeding a family of 4 out her back door. The cook at Transylvania is feeding some too. There are youngins all over.
That's horrifying. Why is the city not addressing this issue?
People got their hands full, ma'am.
But these are children. I have to do something.
Maria! Maria!
Oh dear, Benjamin's home already.
My dear, are you upstairs? I think I'll rest before the trustees' meeting tonight.
The trustees. Well, that's a place to start. I'm in the kitchen. Tilly, get these children bathed and clothed and bring them inside. Benjamin, leave your jacket on. We're going for a walk.
Ah, there you are.
But ma'am, time for me to put dinner out if Mr. Gratz gonna eat before his meeting.
It's been a very warm day. Mr. Gratz can enjoy a cold plate for dinner. Once we get back,
Back? Back from where?
we're going for a walk.
A walk now?
Yes, now.
Why? What's going on? I have a city trustees meeting this evening, and I need to prepare
What you need is to see something. I'll get my hat.
Where are we going?
There's something I want to show you in the alley behind the market.
We are not walking through the alley in the evening. It's filthy. I wouldn't walk in it in broad daylight.
If it's good enough for Lexington's most vulnerable, then it is good enough for us.
But I have to prepare the agenda for the trustees.
Perfect timing. My plan will give you a line item for that agenda. 35 line items, in fact. Let's get moving.
Late fall brings the inevitable between William King Solomon and Aunt Charlotte. His service concluded and his debts paid, he is free from his 9 months of indenture. They have been kind to him. He is well fed, he drinks less, well, a little bit less anyway, and steady outside work has put some money in his pocket. On a bright and promising morning in Charlotte's home, it is time for her and William to both move on.
Now I made you 2 pies, 1 mincemeat, 1 steak. One will keep you sweet, the other will keep you strong.
Thank you, Aunt Charlotte.
I do worry after you, William.
No need. I'll be fine.
I guess if the cholera can't take you down, just about nothing can. I think God himself was keeping an eye on you all those weeks you buried the dead and traipsed through all that mess.
God, maybe. You, definitely. I've had some folks ask me if it was the liquor that did it.
The liquor? How do they figure that?
They seem to think that maybe it preserved me somehow, kept my blood clean.
I don't know about clean. Maybe it was too dirty for that cholera. That cholera took one look at your liquored up blood and said, "Goodbye, King Solomon," and went the other way.
Maybe so. Or maybe I was just too drunk to die.
Or had too much to live for.
I don't think that's what it was.
Well, I do. You had more of a reason to live than most people. You had a purpose. Work that nobody else would do or could do.
Like a slave.
No, William, you were never a slave. You were a servant. There's a difference.
Maybe.
Maybe nothing.
Charlotte,
Yes?
I'm not very good with goodbyes, so I'm just gonna say goodbye and go. All right?
You do and say whatever you need to.
Thank you for everything. Goodbye, Aunt Charlotte.
Goodbye, King Solomon.
Nearby, Maria Gratz addresses the first meeting of a brand new organization, the Lexington Orphan Society.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Mrs. Benjamin Gratz. Please call me Maria. As many of you, before this deadly disease, I was no stranger to death. My husband and I had 6 beautiful sons, yet only 4 of them survive. I lost my sister a few years ago and just lost my beloved mother in this pandemic. I am also no stranger to privilege. I know firsthand that wealth easily covers the cost of burials and newspaper notices, and soothes a hungry family, and that death and grief cannot be swept under the Persian rug or hidden behind a new ball gown. There are families here in Lexington that are not as fortunate as I, but it is specifically the suffering of children that brings us here today. And watching my solitary husband worship and navigate people of various faiths led me to gather us together to create the first ecumenical organization in Lexington, an organization dedicated to comforting the grieving and less fortunate, the Lexington Orphans Society, which will care for these poor young angels made parentless by the cholera. My good friend and neighbor, Abby Sayer, shall serve as its first directrix, and you as its first benefactors. We gather today to feed, clothe, and educate the orphans left behind by this terrible pandemic. But in truth, I'm asking for much more than that. I'm asking you to make a pledge that will survive our efforts today and ensure that no child will again languish on the streets of Lexington. I am asking that we demonstrate our faith through cooperation for the sake of our community and children today and for generations to come. Thank you.
Coda. After, above, and beyond Lexington's cholera epidemic.
Henry Clay keeps running for president while trying to keep his country out of the inevitable Civil War.
Mary Todd will go on to marry the president who will win that war. He will die for that effort. Neither the nation nor Mary will ever quite recover from grief.
John Postlethwaite's Tavern, later the Phoenix Hotel, would grow into a luxurious 20th century destination, only to close in 1977 and be demolished in 1982. It is replaced by Phoenix Park and Park Plaza Apartments.
Cheapside Slave Market would later become Cheapside Park. For a time, a bar and grill bearing its name would stand there.
In 2017, 2 monuments honoring Confederate generals would be removed from Cheapside Park and moved to Lexington Cemetery.
In 2020, the park would be renamed after Henry A. Tandy, a freed slave who contributed his masonry skills to many downtown buildings.
Over time, the town branch would be largely covered and paved over. But the 21st century would bring new interest to Lexington's history, geography, and natural beauty. By 2015, plans would be underway to uncover parts of the branch unseen for more than 100 years. And Charlotte?
No one knows much about me, like where I went after all this cholera business was said and done, or if I was reunited with my son, or where I died, or when I died, or where I'm buried. Folks do know that I existed and that I, a black woman, did indeed purchase the town drunk, a white man, for 90 cents. I guess I owned Solomon for a while, and he was a great servant, but he was never my slave. I was glad to have our partnership. Without his assistance, I would have been lost. And had I not bought William, where would the city of Lexington be? How does my spirit live on? About 100 years after the cholera, in 1938, the city of Lexington would create a low-cost housing project with 206 living units. They named it Charlotte Court. The projects would be located by Georgetown Street near Douglas Park. But they'll disappear too, and there won't be much left to remember me by. But I hope I'm remembered as something more than a slave anyway. It is my hope that I will be remembered as a black woman who ran her own successful business after surviving the indignity of being a slave. Is there any sin greater than the evil and wickedness of slavery? I just know there needs to be atonement.
Charlotte asks for atonement, amends. A person just needs some kind of reimbursement or recognition now and again. Except for a few coins here and there, I never really got paid for burying hundreds of people. But people saw my work firsthand, and as Lady Fate would have it, I'm the one who spent all that time with the dead, and I'm the one that lived another 20 years. I lived to see the city rebound, so I lived to have people thank me and call me king in a kindly way. I died in 1854, and hard to believe, but a lot of people turned out for the funeral. I had nothing, but a man deeply humbled by mixed fortune and a lot of alcohol. But I got buried in the same cemetery as Henry Clay. Finally got laid to rest and was put beneath the ground just a few yards from my famous childhood friend. Years later, they put up a big stone in my grave with important words. William King Solomon, hero of the cholera plague. For had he not a royal heart? I like that royal heart bit. Tied my life up with folks calling me king, but when I think about all that fuss, I'm very mixed inside. I'm grateful for the recognition, the atonement, I am. But I just was a vagrant who became a hero only because I was rescued and supported by the soul of kindness, Charlotte. She was a clever and resourceful, free black woman who saved my life. She did nothing to deserve her hard lot in life, and in return, my grave is marked with fanfare and pomp. But Charlotte is lost to history. Lost. How can I rest easy? If you know what happened to Charlotte, come tell me. That may bring me some peace. But don't come to my tomb. My bones are at the Lexington cemetery, yes, but me, my true self, I am in the Lexington graveyards. I'm in the foundations around Transylvania University. I am in the walkways to the Gratz house, and I am here in the brick walls of the forgotten house on South Upper Street. My life, my eternal life, is in the dirt beneath your feet, in the rich soil of Lexington, Kentucky.
You should always look for the people behind the heroes in the story.
Limestone, 1833, a play for radio, by Adanma Onyedike Barton, Margo Buchanan, and Kevin Lane Dearinger, with sound design created by Samuel Lockridge, edited by Bo List, narrated by Trish Clark. The cast, in order of appearance: Ben Sandfelder as Josiah Espy, Daniel Sandfelder as the sheriff and Gazette reporter, Meredith Frankie Crutcher as Aunt Charlotte, Patrick Mitchell as Raleigh Blue, Eric Moth as townsperson and Captain John Postlethwaite, Jace Peters White as another townsperson and official, Joe Gatton as Dr. Benjamin Dudley, Bo List as the coroner, Walter Tunis as William Solomon, Tim X. Davis as Dr. Lunsford P. Yandell, Karen Czar as barmaid, Emily Norris as Mary Todd, Lindsay Pennington as Betsy Humphreys Todd, Kevin Hardesty as Henry Clay, Julie Clear as Lucretia Hart Clay, Shane Brakefield as the Unnoticed Man, Marianne Miller as Maria Gratz, Amani Adair as Tilly, and Mark Mazingo as Benjamin Gratz. Sammy Durstock served as stage manager, assisted by Morgan Hutchins and Amelia Fitch. This production was made possible thanks to our collaborating partner, University of Kentucky Public Radio 91.3 WUKY, and to our sponsors, LexArts, Irene M. Burnett, and Steve and Terry Knudsen. Additional support provided by our good friends Brady Barlow, John and Carolyn Hackworth, Tedrin Blair Lindsay, Georgia Hinkle, Lee H. Carroll, Janet Holloway, Terry Branson, and Mike Graves. Recording engineered by John Lumagi. To learn more about the Lexington cholera epidemic of 1833, read The Pie Seller, the Drunk, and the Lady by our project historian, Terry Foodie.